The thing about tomatoes is that I love them. They are so sensual. I cannot help myself when I'm walking through a supermarket, even if I'm there to buy bread and milk. I have to go past the tomatoes. And I'll wander past them and make sure that no one's really watching me. And I might go up to a few and just breathe them in. I love the smell of tomatoes, particularly when the word tomato is prefixed by those two magic words, vine ripened. Oh my goodness. The feel of them. I mean, have you ever really looked at a tomato? They are bright red, like rubies or garnets, shining out of the green and the yellow and all the other colours of fruits and vegetables. These things are bright red. The feel of them, sometimes they're really, really smooth. Sometimes they're slightly furry. Sometimes they're quite squeaky if they've been waxed and, cleaned up by Woolworths. And imagine biting into one, a really ripe one that's been sitting on your kitchen counter for at least a couple of weeks after you bought it. Don't keep your tomatoes in the fridge. Keep them out in the open. You bite into a tomato and the juices rush down your chin onto your shirt, and they are sweet and they're all consuming. They fill your senses, and I love them. A while ago, I realized that actually going into Woolworths and fondling the tomatoes was probably not the right thing to do. It's a little bit like staying in over the weekend and watching a lot of romantic comedies and not going out and getting a relationship, right? So I decided I was going to be growing my own tomatoes. I could have that feeling, that wonderful experience at home whenever I wanted to. So I got myself off down to Bunnings. Bunnings is fantastic. They have something for everything that you want to do. And they also have a kit for growing tomatoes, which makes it very easy for someone like me who's not really well adapted to gardening. I don't have green fingers. But you can buy a bag full of stuff and you can slit open and water it and stick some sticks in and you get tomato plants. And this is wonderful, a great invention. So I did this and I got them home. A couple of weeks after I started watering my tomato plants, they started growing, which was fantastic. This was so easy. A few more weeks and they'd grown taller. And I started winding them around the stick to make sure that they grew up instead of upward. I read the instructions. A couple more weeks and they started growing even taller. And I found myself spending time in the garden talking to my tomatoes because I'd heard that this encourages growth and fruit. I thought, this is fantastic. About a couple of months into the growing experience, I noticed that I had loads of buds and loads of shoots, and I had loads of fruit all over the plant. Wonderful. I was finally reaping from my efforts. All of a sudden, I ended up with almost no fruit. Because apparently, when you grow a tomato plant, you can't just leave all the buds on the end. You can't leave all the fruit on the end. You have to get rid of the ones that aren't doing too well, so that the other ones can get all the nutrients and all the water and become really big, juicy tomatoes. I had made the critical mistake of trying to grow too many tomatoes on my plant. And isn't that a little bit like relationships? We're all in this world of social media and Facebook. I have my 627 closest friends on Facebook, and I interact with them every single day. John in England, who I once met in the pub, now has a 3-month-old baby. I can't even remember John's surname. In my work life, I desperately try and create social connections, business connections between this guy that I met at this client and this person I met at this event. And I have 700 LinkedIn contacts. Fantastic, I'm doing so well. If I walk past them in the street, I will never recognize them. The thing about relationships, like growing tomato plants, is that you need to nurture the ones that you want to keep. And in order to do that, yes, you have to water them. You have to put time into it. Yes, you have to talk to your plants. You have to pick up the phone every so often and make a connection with your relationships. But you also have to look at that tomato plant and realize that actually, out of the 30 buds and pieces of fruit on that tomato plant, maybe 10 of them are really worthwhile progressing with. And the other 20 are simply sucking up resources. And every so often, you have to get out the secateurs and clip them off. Because we are time poor. We have a lot of stuff going on in our lives. And if we're trying to constantly feed and water 600 relationships, whether they be social or whether they be business, we can't do it well. And the ones that really matter, the relationships that are really going to bear fruit for us, the ones that I'd love to fully immerse myself in and experience all the essential aspects of, are the ones that I have to focus on, keep. So next time you're going through Woolies, and you will, and you go past the tomato tray, look for the vine-ripened tomatoes. Have a smell. Have a bit of a fondle. And think about the people in your lives. Mr. Toastmaster.